But the
Yeah,
Philadelphia 76ers,
and
there's
it's
a lot more
guaranteed
pressure.
too.
There's a lot more pressure for them to become championship teams, especially considering, like, let's be honest, they've underachieved since Joel Embiid's era. Like Joel Embiid himself has achieved pretty well, right? Championship, not championships, not bad. MVPs, All NBA, Hall of Famer. But like, dog, when you look at the Philadelphia 76ers from like the Sam Hinkie era, where it was a whole rebuild, then you get Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, you get a lot of these young guys, and then you obviously you pivot from James Vince to James. They haven't really achieved anything in the playoffs. Is a lot of disappointment, a lot of just mediocrity.
Yeah, it's and I like how you touching base on this because we're gonna touch on these two teams, the Suns and the 76ers, how they have a lot of pressure this season. But going to the 76ers, you're right. And a lot of their underachievement is that they stay committed to that trust the process bullshit, to staying obligated to Ben Simmons. They got rid of Jimmy Butler just to see him bring a team to NBA Finals 2 times out of the last 3 years. And then staying committed to Ben Simmons forced them to, kind of make that trade for James Harden. That shit did not end up working out either. It's just a lot of, it's a lot of clusterfucks that happen in between that. But now they got Paul George. They really got bailed out because of Tyrese Maxey, getting him in the late first round, and now he's potentially a perennial all-star. Who knows? But I think the only reason Joel Embiid is still there is because the way Tyrese Maxey worked out. It's almost like they got him, just through the draft for free. They didn't have to make a
Actually,
trade. They just got him on the squad, and now he's a perennial all-star. He basically replaced what James Harden brought to the team.
I think Maxi became that closer for the team at this point.
Nah, he's not the closer, but he's the good sidekick that an Embiid needs in that pick and
Yeah.
roll, especially with that speed that he has. That pick and roll with Embiid and Maxey is deadly, man.
But
It
I
is
think he will
deadly.
become the closer for that team.
Say that again. Who?
I think he'll eventually do. I think eventually he'll become the closer for that team.
Man, his 3-point shot coming off that pick and roll is gonna have to improve for
Yeah,
that to happen.
100%. And I could see it happening because I think the 76ers, like, bro, like, let's be honest, are we relying on like Joel Embiid or Paul George to really close out a game? You have to. Maxi does have to make that jump in order to become a closer and step up as a 1A guy last 3 minutes of the fourth quarter.
Yeah, he can, but also a lot of the onus does fall in Embiid because last season that loss to the Knicks was bad. They had no
It was
Mitchell
embarrassing.
Robinson. They had OG was, I believe he might have been in and out in that series. I believe he played the whole series, but they were missing Bojan, they was missing Mitch. They was missing a lot of key guys. They had guys playing over 40 minutes and
Bro, they
Embiid
lost to
still
Josh Hart.
lost. Yeah, Josh Hart playing over 40 minutes. That was a
Josh Hart was
bad loss on
incredible.
their part.
Josh Hart was incredible that postseason, bro.
Yeah, he
That series,
was.
he was incredible.
Yeah, he was for sure. But yeah, Embiid, there is a lot of pressure, and then he looked kind of shaky in that Olympics. When things got more physical, the referees were tucking in their whistles because that's what happens on the international stage. The stars don't get those bullshit calls, and you see Embiid struggle with that. So what
Yeah.
happens in the playoffs? The NBA playoffs have the similar, kind of atmosphere where the referees, they're tucking in the whistles a lot more. Is Embiid really ready for that? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he's gonna have to show he can elevate. Because I'm
And
telling you, last season that playoff loss against the Knicks, that shit was bad. Like, people could blame the Embiid injury, but this guy was playing over almost 40 minutes. Like, if he was injured, he would have never been playing that many minutes. He was just getting outclassed by the
yeah.
other team.
But dude, I'm gonna be honest, for a 10-year player like Joel Embiid at this point, like this conversation's kind of it's embarrassing, man. Like this kind of conversation should have for like guys who are like 3, 4 years, like Franz Wagner kind of players, bro. Like Joel Embiid, you're a veteran in the game at this point. You should be able to like figure it out.
Yeah, but there was a few times in the fourth quarter in the middle of that series where Embiid kind of just, disappeared in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. But dude, that's the problem, right? Like I think Joel Embiid, like with him, it's like, bro, how many times are we gonna have this conversation? Because every postseason, every offseason, everyone has this conversation, whether it's, the loss to Toronto Raptors, which is fine. He was a young player. You talk about the 3-2 lead that he blew against the Celtics. Many series where it's just like, man, like when are we seeing Joel Embiid make that jump? And it
Yeah.
seems like every playoff we look at mediocrity. So at some point now, the 76ers giving him everything he's asked for, right?
Mm-hmm.
Him and Simmons didn't work out. You bring in James Harden. James Harden, okay, Tyrese Halliburton, and you bring in some depth. Now it's like, bro, and also coaching wise too, they brought in many talents. You look at obviously Doc Rivers, the championship coach, gone. You bring in Nick Nurse, another championship coach. So at some point, we gotta look at it and be like, man, when the 76ers cut their loss and decide, you know what, maybe Embiid isn't it, because
Well,
because it's gonna head towards that way. He isn't healthy.
yeah, he's not
He's,
in
he's
shape.
yeah,
I mean, even during the
no,
Olympics, he still wasn't in shape. I was like, damn, still. And then, his window for being prime and beat doesn't really have that much time. You know what I mean? Like he's injury prone. He's always in and
yeah.
out of shape. Like, do we really see Embiid still being in his prime past the age of 33?
100%, bro. He's a player since coming into the league. He's been injury prone. He's kind of on a limited timetable throughout his career.
We'll see.
Like,
We'll see. I mean, Paul George, at this point in his career, he's kind of like a complimentary star.
yeah,
Especially last year during the playoffs against the Mavericks. You know, it wasn't a good playoffs for Podcast P. I gotta say that.
podcast B, of course, bro. With him is always shaky, man. With Paul George at this point, like I think 2021 was the last playoff series where he was relatively healthy and in a good performance. Since then, he's been on the decline, and it's hard for me to It's hard. Like for me, it's like that's why I say like I think Tyrese Maxey asked to make that jump because you're relying on two guys who don't show up in the playoffs and who have a relatively unhealthy track record. So you have to rely on Tyrese Halliburton to show up. You have to rely on kind of like Kelly Oubre to really step up too as a role player.
Correct. Yeah, that was a good re-sign for them. Kelly Oubre really proved his value last season. But
One hundred percent.